Banking CXOs have been building scalable architecture for their counterpart business teams. A bigger task awaits for them to enable a virtual workplace environment, and not only for their own staff but customers as well. Banking CXOs will deliberate on how they can enable this. So to navigate this conversation, allow me to invite Amol Dete, editor ETBFSI, to take it ahead.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the world of innovation. In fact, it's the whirling world of innovation. And I have the CTOs, CIOs, and CDOs from the top banks going to talk about how they are dealing with the innovation, not only during the pandemic, but how do they see the innovative world, specifically in the financial institutions post-pandemic. And allow me to introduce all the speakers to you. My first speaker is Ms. ANITA Pai, the CEO of S Bank. ANITA ma'am, welcome on the show.
Thank you.
My next speaker is ANAND NATARAJAN, the CEO of DBS Bank India. ANAND sir, welcome on the show.
Thank you, pleasure to be here.
My next speaker is DEEPAK Sharma, the President and CDO, KOTAK Mahindra Bank. DEEPAK sir, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, great to be here.
My next speaker is SHARAD SAXENA, the CTO, Bank of Baroda. SHARAD sir, please welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amol.
And my last speaker is Mr. SRIHARSHA Narasimhan, CTO, ARUBA, a HEWLETT packet enterprise company. Mr. Narasimhan, please welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Amol.
Great. So I'm really excited to understand the whirling world of innovation, and we'll try to understand how the actually financial institutions are looking at innovation. So Anita, I will start from you. We have seen a lot of innovation starting in innovation specifically into the banking institutions since last couple of years. But looking at the current time, which is absolutely the pandemic, now the banks have also started thinking what next after this pandemic. So in this era, how are you navigating the innovation?
So, Amal, when you think of innovation, whenever you conjure up a thought of innovation, you always look at a team that is sitting around a table discussing, ideating. You have these pictures of a whiteboard, people writing or designing a product or a new process. And in this situation, during the pandemic, getting together, sitting together is almost not possible. But it is also this situation of the pandemic that has the most call for innovation, because the customer is looking to consume anything which is innovative, anything which is contactless. And this puts even more pressure on all of us to come up with innovative solutions. If I look at Yes Bank, I think our digital backbone has always been a competitive strength, which typically relies on the agility of our staff. And I think how do you navigate this particular era? You do what you did earlier, but do it better in shorter cycles. Continue to listen to the customer, look at what the customer is sort of wanting, continue to mine the data, look at what analytics can show you as insights, and quick, short learning ability to how do you fix that, and actually then focus on execution. I think this is if you ask me, the way that that we at Yes Bank are continuing to try to navigate this era and yet continuously be innovative. That's the way I would look at it.
Okay, thank you for that note, Ms. Pai. I will move to Mr. Natarajan. How are you looking at unlocking the digital opportunities, Mr. Natarajan, at the current time?
I think, as Anita mentioned, this is for us a glass half full, really. I think this is a point of great opportunity, and we are addressing it at multiple levels. I think the first thing around this period is that the future is still evolving. The business models are changing. The way we interact with customers, the way customer requirements and needs are evolving is changing. So there is really no fixed post that we're looking at. So our approach is to enter this, access this with an open mind. Be ready, create the squads that are willing to learn, adapt quickly in exactly the manner that Anita mentioned, and look to solving both the immediate or the future needs. Now, again, we're looking at it at 2 or 3 levels. One is almost looking at scenarios and being ready with the various scenarios. Which are the industries, which are the behaviors that are going to be of a more durable change in the way customers and the marketplace evolves. So there are the tactical shifts that you're seeing with this disruption, but there are also the enduring shifts. So we're addressing and looking at what those enduring shifts are. And with that at the start point, we're looking at both tactical and strategically. Tactically, of course, push the digital agenda. Make sure that the acceptability levels that are available today in the market because of the dislocation are capitalized on, and you keep the engagement going. And that's done through a variety of tests and engagement patterns. The second part is really beyond even the technology phase. It's around how do you, look at our own distribution channels that will change. Will the physical distribution be in exactly the same way it was? Will customers interact with us in the same way that they used to? Will the way you solve for customer needs and requirements change in your distribution pattern, whether it be channels or physical distribution? That again is undergoing severe change, and we are experimenting with a variety of models. The third part is around our own workspaces. How do we innovate in the way that we run our operations? How do we run processing shops on a more durable basis without losing long-term solutioning for oversight, productivity management, surveillance, etc. And that's becoming a lot more involved, because while we shifted very quickly in the light of the pandemic to a work from home, etc., those were really BCP's kind of evolutions. And what we're having to work to innovate is shift from a BCP to a BAU on a distributed environment. And that's really where we're working around. How does centralization work? How do you work off a distributed centralization? Can you create virtual spokes? How do you have supervisory control over this? So multiple levels of digitalization and solutioning. And that's really where we're headed. Is there a single endpoint that we're looking at? Absolutely not. But what we are looking at is leave no holy grail untouched. Evaluate each based on emerging scenarios, test the hypothesis. Right now is absolutely the best time to test as many hypotheses as you can, because the market is willing, the infrastructure is willing, and the environment is willing.
Very well said, Mr. Natarajan. You spoke about the environment, and in fact, my next question was about virtual workplace or environment. And my question is specifically for Mr. Sharma. Mr. Sharma, if you could tell me that in the virtual world, everybody is trying to build a virtual bank, and that is the new concept now, that we should have a virtual bank. I would like you to tell us what kind of feeders are you adding, to make the virtual bank realistic in India?
Amol, while we all love technology and digital, but I strongly believe that we'll never have a purely virtual world. Just like we still are far away from AR and VR as the technology, even though we have been talking about both augmented and virtual reality.
Right.
A virtual bank, in my mind, is not the way or design, but yes, the way we look at it is it's a bionic or a hybrid bank, where increasingly more and more of products, services will get rendered digitally. And thereby we will see less and less of those interactions happening in the physical or the face-to-face world. But just like this event today, while we are having this as a virtual conference, but I'm sure given a chance, we will also again come to love and meet sometime in the physical world. If I take the same example of the event back into banking, I think the choice is for the customer to make. And what we are doing as we design our channels or our products or customer onboarding is to provide customer that choice as to how he or she would like to interact with the bank. And I think this is where India as a country and the customer segments that we all serve as a universal bank has its own inbuilt complexity. Be it the language, because today in a physical world, we can talk the language that a customer speaks. Digitally, we still have not been able to build a strong vernacular stack. When we will love to build a strong conversational engine, while we have all invested on the AI-powered customer interface, but still it's not really at a level where it can replace a branch interaction or a contact center interaction in totality. While I think we have started to onboard customers digitally thanks to the video KYC, and in our case, when we started 811, but still when you look at onboarding a small businesses or current account segments, or when you are looking at onboarding a customer for certain loan categories, there is still a need for a certain due diligence that takes you to the physical world. So the way we look at the whole banking interface changing is, while technology is at the core, we will start to see a lot many of the journeys right from looking for a product or a service to finally transacting and interacting digitally. But it will continue to have its own plugins into the physical world. And my take is about 70 to 80% of all customer journeys that we have today will become digital, but still we will have about 20% such journeys, which will bring customers as and when they require onto our physical world. And both the worlds will coexist as we see the world ahead.
Very interesting, Mr. Sharma, and very, very valuable thoughts. Mr. Saxena, I would like you to tell us now, how do you look at digital at the Bank of Baroda? You being a PSU bank, a very traditional bank, when the private bankers are very sure that, AR and, the VR is a bit far, and we will have a mixed model, not specifically digital, but also the, part of physical going ahead, digital model. How do you look at digital? What are your priorities at Bank of Baroda specifically into digital formats?
Yeah, thanks, Amol. Thanks for this question. And I think it's very pertinent to a public sector bank. Having said that, I think digital has multiple facets. One thing which comes to my mind, as Anita was saying, people sitting around a table. Another thing which comes to my mind is that when we talk about digital, we talk about the manifestation of digital to the end customer. Whatever customer, it might be a corporate customer to a retail customer, and digitally dispensing our services to the customer. But what are the enablers behind that also have to be in place? And that's a very big opportunity in this time, that the entire service delivery value chain, which is there behind to deliver a digital product or deliver a product digitally, has to be digitally enabled. And that is what is very important. I'll give you some examples. For example, we embarked upon a very ambitious project on data lake. It has got ready. We have built various models, both on customer side, risk, and many other treasury. If the organization is not able to use these digital enablers, they will never be able to build new products. If people do not know how to use propensity model for cross-sell or upsell, they will never be able to design their marketing strategies, sales strategies. So what we have done now during this pandemic time, certainly it has given a new push to the digitization internally in terms of the processes which are there, and putting them on a fast track, which despite various pushes from my side and many others did not happen in the past, have got accelerated. We are focusing on these things. While the end manifestation to the customer in terms of digital delivery of the product is very important, as you would know, we are currently engaged in a big amalgamation. We are taking two banks, Dena Bank and Vijaya Bank, and merging them with Bank of Baroda. And that is where, again, a huge opportunity of innovation, may not be digital, but innovation is there. And that is what we have been doing, despite, and I'm very happy to tell you, despite all the pandemic situation and the constraints it has put, we have been able to migrate about 1,200 branches in the last 5 months, and we'll be completing with Dena Bank next month and Vijaya Bank by the end of this year. This is all thanks to the internal digitization and the innovative techniques we have used to do this. Yeah.
Actually, on that front, I must say that, as we all know, Yes Bank went through a moratorium. The moratorium was lifted on the 19th of March. And 19th of March is when the lockdown began. So actually, everything that we did, managed getting the new board to understand what the bank does, understand each function, everything, reach out to all our customers who are hassled at the time of the moratorium, reaching out to them digitally, getting a big chunk of the money that was lost at that point back into the bank. Almost everything was done digitally. So I think we sometimes underestimate what customers are happy to do and how the bank can reach out to them even in times of crisis. So we had a customer 360-degree app that was there, and like Sharad said, there were certain things that we were pushing, but was taking its own time. So getting the customer 360-degree application on the mobile was something that got done very quickly, which otherwise probably would have taken a few months. This helped all our relationship managers to actually reach out to customers. Not only that, we built in features by which we could, after discussion with a customer, if you felt that the customer was interested in a particular product, you could send him a link, and all the customer had to do was to, approve on that link, and the product got issued. Now, those are things which in the regular time would have taken us a long, long time. But some things I think pandemics helped to fast track and fast forward some of these things.
Thank you for adding that note, Ms. Pai, and good to see pandemic having a great impact on the financial services and specifically at banks, because it has a negative impact on many other sectors. Yes, and in fact, many bankers, while I was talking to them, they told me that otherwise it would have been taken months for us to take the approval to access the VPN, sitting at home. But because of pandemic, they didn't have any other options, the security officers or the risk officers. Thank you, Ms. Pai, for adding that. And Mr. Narasimhan, my question is now for you. The question is about the mobile first channel or the agnostic approach that the bank should have. And I would like you to tell me, what will play out the best for the banks in terms of mobile first or channel agnostic approach?
Actually, when the pandemic hit, okay, we got some breather in terms of being able to sit back at home and think about each vertical that we work with, okay, be it manufacturing, be it banking, or other sectors which are there, and start looking at how we can help our customers in bouncing back at the earliest. And when we started looking at banking was one area where you had to be physically present in either your branches or in your offices to get things done. Okay, this is where we quickly came up with a work from home solution, which we had actually envisaged back when SARS was dominating the world back in 2010. And that's a solution that we carried forward. And then that was one which came to our aid at this point, wherein I could plug an access point or a wireless solution at homes of bank executives, and they would enjoy the same level of security and access that they would have in their branches. Okay, so this was a solution that we started talking to our customers and then started doing POCs and getting them to onboard onto it. At the same time, we were also looking at some of our non-banking financial or fintech customers, because they came up and said that I have to be agile and I need to be on the front all the time. So how do you make sure that my agents who are going to be there in the field are not going to compromise the banking norms which are there? So this is where your channel agnostic approach comes into picture. Being able to send an agent to somebody's home with a tablet and onboard the customer or onboard the transaction, okay, in a very secure manner, as if it's happening in the branch, was something that we were able to enable the fintech organization. So that's a very, very scalable model, and it can be extended to any banking organization or any insurance or any of these sectors. And this is what we found is going to be very useful in the digital transformation that we are going to be onboarding, not just for now, but as we move forward and then encounter any other situation in future.
Thank you, Mr. Narasimhan. And now, I will maybe shift gears after taking the opening remarks from all of you and maybe ask some specific questions. So, Mr. Sharma, my question to you is, I do remember the conversation, in fact, we had last time also, where you said that bankers are looking for, creating a Netflix-like experience for our customers, and that's a very, very interesting thing. So looking at the digital, which comes with the speed and convenience, my question to you, sir, is how are you going to keep the lights on specifically after the pandemic?
So I think banking is a very, very unique business where we are keeping customers' money
Mhm.
and we are lending against that. And the capital what banks put is a part of whatever is our lending book, right? So I think unlike any other industry where innovation drives customer engagement, here the trust is defined by how safe or how do you manage the banking infrastructure, right? So I think the resilience, the uptime, the performance, the network stability, managing the whole risk, fraud, security framework, and a lot of these things are typically associated with keeping the lights on. But this is what is the core of banking, irrespective of this sounds glamorous or not, but I think this will continue to remain the core of banking because as the custodian of customers' trust, financial goodwill, anything and everything, be data, privacy, will continue to be the core. And I think all of this also requires a constant innovation, be it the way we upgrade our infra, the way we look at uh, making things far more agile, ability to scale up, scale down, as we are seeing rapid transaction volume growth or managing over 150, 200 different core systems at any given point in time. And it has its own complexity of running things. But I think what banks are doing, and this is where I see bank as probably the industry which is underappreciated for the kind of things that bankers do, is that by keeping while the lights on and making sure that irrespective of COVID or any scenario, you can trust your bank and you know anytime you go and swipe your card, the transaction will go through. You go to a ATM and you will get your cash. You go into a channel and do a fund transfer and money will move. I think all that is happening. And on top of it, what we are doing is building obviously a new bank. And this is where I think the Netflix type moment, which I spoke about, is becoming relevant because today during pandemic, most of the banks started the video KYC based onboarding solution, right? So I think today customers can be onboarded digitally. Today we offer customers a channel of their choice. It's no more just a net or mobile, it's a WhatsApp or it's a conversational banking bot like we run Kea. Others also have their own AI powered interface, or probably even optimizing our call center for work from home infra, because when the agents can't come to office to take call, how do you build this whole infra which can be taken to their place of work? And I think today every single area a bank is revisiting to say, how do I optimize my cost? How do I optimize my spends? Keeping customer at the center. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we are not just catering to one customer segment. I think today India has different shades of customers. Some are digitally matured, some are millennials, some are still in love with cash, or they still want to come to branch. And we have to find a way to innovate for all customers. So the branch journey is going through as much of reimagination as a digital journey is, or a contact center or ATM is. And I think banks will continue to play on these two worlds and hope that we will be able to converge it at some stage. But as of now, I think it does need a different mindset of speed versus managing scale without any risk. And I think this is where, famously, what we call in KOTAK is a two policy. That's a one-way decision and two-way decision. There are certain calls we take in which we can retract back, and we are okay to take those calls and take some amount of risk, because you don't lose anything if you take those risks or your bets go wrong. But anything which is around risk, anything which is around your core, you just don't want to take any risk. And I think that is where the decisions will continue to be careful, considered, maybe slow, but strong in terms of resilience and long-term performance. And these two mindsets, these two approaches, these two type of teams, these two different models, it coexists today in almost every bank that I can say. The degrees can vary, but these two models do exist.
A very interesting thought, but again, it's a debatable point, and I would like Mr. Saxena to enlighten us more on this. Two things can coexist, but in PSU banks, obviously, the major challenges are, the culture. And now, Mr. Saxena, when there are other banks merged with you, how difficult will it be for you to, transform one innovation, bring one strategy, and ensure that it will be replicated or implemented at all the levels.
I think one thing which I strongly agree with DEEPAK is keeping the core agile, keeping the core up and running. I mean, it is very impervious or rather opaque to a lot of people in the senior management and the organization as to how IT is run. And a large part of how IT is run within the organization is going to determine how we are going to deliver to the customer. And a lot of innovation gets into that as to how IT is run. IT is transforming immensely as to how it runs in the background. So while we are amalgamating, I'll answer your question on the customer facing innovation subsequently. Sure. But while we are innovating, I think we are taking into account how we are going to run the IT, how we are going to run the IT while we are migrating and subsequently when we are migrated. So one thing which we have taken care of by doing a lot of innovation is that the whole process of migration becomes completely transparent to the end user. We don't want to put banners like you see on the roads in Mumbai that Mumbai is upgrading, kindly bear with us. We don't want to put a banner like this that the banks are amalgamating and kindly bear with us. Nobody will take it lightly. So, and I'm very happy to tell you that we have been largely able to achieve that objective. Having said that, I think this is a great opportunity to transform our back-end IT as to how do we deliver, what are the various new tools and techniques we'll bring in to become more agile and more responsive. Having said that, shifting focus towards customer delivery, as I said, the data lake part, we have created a new digital lending department which are reimagining the journeys. We are transforming our branch network while we are doing a lot of rationalization on branches because of the merger, dropping some, merging many, and so on. What are the new areas, business opportunities which we have in terms of reach in various parts of the country, and as also the final customer delivery, digital delivery in terms of various channels which DEEPAK alluded to. I think these are all the things which we are doing as we go along the journey of strengthening the core and merging without pain.
Very interesting. Yes, the bankers cannot carry that, thing that amalgamation is underway. A very, very interesting point, Mr. Saxena. Ms. Pai, I will come back to you again, and I would like you to tell us more about the fintech partnerships and collaborations. I do understand that once upon a time, Yes Bank had many partnerships with fintechs, but whatever the challenges that the Yes Bank went through, the fintechs also suffered a lot. Going ahead, what kind of partnerships will you have with fintechs? What kind of changes do you see in the collaboration and partnerships with fintechs?
Actually, I'm very happy to say that while some of the fintechs moved away some of the business during the tough times, almost everything has come back, because we are a very strong we call it the ART, the Alliances Relationship and Technology model that we work on in Yes Bank. So once a alliance and a relationship is fixed with a particular fintech, we work very closely, integrate very well. So to one of the questions you'd asked earlier, is it a mobile first philosophy that we should be having? According to me, it's an API first philosophy that we've always been practicing. So what happens is you build it once, you can use it multiple times, you can use it with multiple partners, and it's a stack that's readily available for use. So, and we have strengthened it with the technology, with the amount of power that it requires to ensure that volumes are taken care of. And at the end of it, we have a very good customer service mindset to enable that all the fintechs who work with us are able to get whatever they need in terms of reconciliations, in terms of managing, amounts that or transactions that fall off, all of that very well. So, so first of all, to your question, I think fintechs that went away definitely have come back. We've actually in the first few months of this financial year added many more models of working with fintechs in varied spaces. So for example, we launched something called the Chalo card, which helps. We launched it in Mangalore and Udupi, and we will be following it up with many more cities, where we work with Chalo, which is a contactless payment solution. So right from, so you don't have to actually use cash, you don't need to take a ticket, all of that is managed. You can even look at expected. So we've not just stayed with the fintech in terms of the monetary piece, but gone beyond. So when a citizen is waiting for a bus, what he wants to know is when will that bus come to that particular bus stop. So expected times of arrival, expected time of departure, all of that is managed through the app, and the whole financial piece of it is through Yes Bank. Similarly, we have with our Afford plan put up a whole preferred hospitalization card, which again manages to get you preferential treatment and allotment in about 700 odd hospitals. It helps to manage all payments within the hospital. So I think we have continued our journey on tying up with fintech specific solutions. And like I said, the advantage always is that we build it once and then we can use it across that particular industry. And that is what we will continue to aim at.
Thank you, Ms. Pai, for that thoughts. And Mr. Natarajan, my question to you is specifically about the timing. I mean, most of the times I have heard this term called timing. Your timing should be right. When it comes to innovation, is it really important to have your timing right? Why I'm asking this is because recently I also heard the global CEO of DBS Bank talking about that henceforth I will hire more engineers and not the bankers or not the graduates, but the psychologists and the philosophers at the bank. So has the timing really changed? And in terms of innovation, what is the right timing?
The question about timing is absolutely important. Let me put it this way. I think it is important to be ready to grab an opportunity when it comes. It is important to be able to imagine reasonably what the emerging landscape will be, right? So in terms of timing, you can never time everything right, but you have to work on 2 or 3 fundamental principles. And the principles really are organizationally, are you architected and infrastructurally ready to be able to take advantage of emerging technologies, emerging capabilities on one side. Number 2, you may have the hard infrastructure. 3, do you have the mindset and the people that are available to take advantage of it? But more importantly, never losing sight that everything that you do, whether you want to innovate, whether you want to re-architect, you have to get the customer need present and future into focus. So when we spoke about Piyush speaking about what he is doing around hiring, it was really a program that started about 4 years ago when we started the digitalization of our DNA. And it ran across multiple fronts. The first was a program called Gandalf. Gandalf really is acronymed after all the major technology companies, Google, Amazon, Apple, LinkedIn, Netflix, Facebook, and the D in the Gandalf being DBS Bank. And that really started talking about reimagining the way we conduct our businesses. We started looking at ourselves more a technology company than a banking services company. And we changed our core infrastructure, and we're changing the infrastructure to moving to open source, moving to collaborative, API driven, moving to data analytics powered infrastructure. So that was the first piece, getting your infrastructure able to take advantage of innovation. The second part is around creating a culture of innovation. Right. It is in terms of how you hire people, but it is also how you create a workspace, a very innovation capability. So number 1, we hire very differently. A lot of our people come through hackathons. They don't go through the normal hiring mechanism. So automatically you start throwing problem statements at people, and people who solve the problem, who are disciplined to solving problems, get hired into our company. Any problem statement, both external and internal, is actually challenged within the company. So you create a mentality where innovation is the part of your DNA rather than something that you have internally. So it's important to get the infrastructure right. It's important to get the work culture right. It's important to get the workspace also, enabled for innovation. But above all of this falls to nothing unless the underlying rationale is how do I make the customer journey effortless, simpler, frictionless, futuristic, intuitive. When we spoke about digibank, the outcome was a solution, and the entire other work was around what you call innovation, disruption, was around creating the architecture. So long statement, but I don't think you want to work around saying, how do I time an innovation? But you work around how am I ready to grab every disruption as an opportunity to grow, remodify yourself, and develop solutions for the marketplace rather than deal with it reactively.
Very interesting, Mr. Natarajan. Mr. Narasimhan, you heard the bankers talking about how they're reimagining their journeys, how they're putting the customer at the center. Considering all these things, and we are in the need of time where the innovation is going to play a major role. What kind of financial innovations do you see, will overtake in banking or the financial institution space going ahead?
Few things that come to my mind, okay, when I'm listening to all the bankers, few of the things that they mentioned, okay, like frictionless, okay, interactions, and then the other aspects which are there, okay, in terms of innovation, keeping the lights on, okay, and also bringing in the financial agility, okay, so that you are able to connect with the customer and then look at what the customer needs. Because ultimately you cannot spray all kind of marketing messages across to customers and expect them to look at all of it and then pick one. Okay, so this is where the suite of solutions that we worked on, okay, in terms of making sure that the employees of the bank don't have any experience issues in the bank. So typically in a pandemic situation, you want to make sure that all your application access, everything that's happening, okay, in your branches and then in all the other areas, they're all functioning fine because you don't have your technical team on site all the time. So you have a limited set of resources over there. So this is where having a 24/7 technician available on your site, which is a small tool that's going to be testing all your access, everything, okay, seamlessly. And also looking at how do I sense the presence of my customers, okay, either in my branches or any of the key places where I have my presence. Okay, that's another area where we look at innovations. And then the third area what we look at is, okay, how do we help the banks in automating the network infrastructure as well? Okay, so this is another place where we need to be bringing in the artificial intelligence so that the problems that may occur in the infrastructure, because ultimately everyone is looking at making sure that the connectivity as well as access to applications, access to resources, everything works seamlessly. Okay, like it was mentioned, okay, when I swipe a card, I need to get the money. But for that to happen, there are a lot of things that need to work seamlessly behind. Can we make sure that there's no glitch in any of these, there's no latency in any of these? Because everything that happens within a bank is all sensitive to latency. And if any link is broken, there's a failover. Okay, we have built enough other mechanisms, but latency is something that we haven't been able to conquer. So can we proactively look at some of these elements, okay, the basic elements which are there behind the scene, and make sure that they are functioning all the time, so that from the front-end perspective, bankers are able to focus on what they need to deliver to their customers and not worry about the infrastructure part.
Very interesting thoughts, Mr. Narasimhan. And obviously, we are moving towards a end. But before that, I will just wrap up with few important questions. And the questions are more on the fundamental side, on whatever is happening in the economy. You being a banker, playing a major role specifically in disbursing loans to the borrowers who are actually running the economy. But the current situation is really bad, where the demand is low, the GDP has declined, the borrowers are complaining that they are not getting the funds from the banks. Mr. Sharma, I will start with you. By any chance, I'm sure you are taking a 360-degree perspective when you're thinking about the innovation. But how does it matter to your innovation geopolitical challenges, the demand of the low demand in the economy. Do you also take these kind of things into consideration while innovating, or bringing innovation to your bank?
So I think when we look at innovation, one of the things we believe is what is it that will not change?
Right.
And I think there are certain fundamentals will not change in a country like India. That is that we need to be far more lean, mean, and efficient in the way we provide financial service to consumers. So if there are innovation which is leading towards a better productivity, a better understanding of risk, credit, underwriting, collections, those kind of innovation are weather agnostic.
Right.
Okay. Similarly, the other area is as we see more and more of digital adoption, customers will continue to demand more personalized services on digital channels of their choice. That means innovating across digital channels through omni-channel, building AI capability. That's again something that is fundamentally not going to change. The environment around fraud, risk, security, data privacy, how we leverage data to build new business models. That's again something that's fundamental and that's not going to change. So when we look at innovation, we always see what are the key outcomes as a firm we are driving. So cost to income ratios, productivity, managing the risk better. And I think all the innovation which helps you towards all these outcomes, these innovation continues irrespective of we have COVID or we have some other external events or changes in market dynamics, because these are core fundamental to the way financial services built. And I think there's nothing better than a time like this to question everything from zero base, reprioritize what needs to be fast track, and also kill a lot of initiatives that probably were lying because nobody took a call on them when everything was good. So I think I find this is probably an opportune time for firms to pick new initiative, but also sunset some of the old ones.
Very interesting. I mean, Mr. Saxena, Mr. Sharma is finding this as an opportunistic time. How is it for you? I mean, at PSU Bank.
Well, we are no different, and I think this is a great opportunity for us in multiple ways. Number one, I think with the technology which we are putting to use, we have become more productive, and we would have traveled a long distance to attend this particular seminar, but we are now being more productive and utilizing our time better. Having said that, I think the type of efficiencies we are putting within the organization to become more agile, as I alluded earlier, those are helping us. The demands of the customers in terms of the delivery to them, which were sitting on the back burner, and the businesses were not so actively looking at that, are now very active, and they are asking us to do take up those projects. One very important aspect which I mentioned earlier, and I think this is very important, the whole reimagination of product construct around data. Since we have taken a very big leap in terms of constructing a very state-of-the-art data lake, the people who have grown in the MIS era have to completely unlearn and relearn what the data can do for them. And as Anita said, API first, I think what is very important now is data first strategy or analytics first strategy. How are we going to make products based on the analytics we have so that we are more lean, mean, and we go in a focused manner and go to a customer, and our chances, the probability of converting that that lead into a customer becomes much higher. Or for example, we have made a model for early warning in the corporate environment, and keep evolving that model to give better predictability. Or we want to manage cash more effectively, and we have built a model around that. Is that model working for us? I think this whole pandemic has given us time to look at that and focus on those opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Saxena, for that note. Ms. Pai, you heard Mr. Sharma and Mr. Saxena giving a kind of a very holistic view on what kind of opportunities they see in this market. But again, looking at the changes and the challenges in the economy, which is absolutely disrupted, do you see some changes and challenges, and specifically the challenges in innovations as well? Because many people have lost their jobs. So banking will be at a minimum level. lending will be at a crucial time. So are you going to see the impact on your digital strategy in your future?
I think, different things will keep happening, and it is for us to be future ready.
Okay.
Like you said, people may have lost jobs. It is important for us through our data to figure out, well, a lot of data is available on customer behavior, customer spend patterns. So on one side, yes, people may have lost jobs. If they are the customers of a particular bank, it is important that the bank is able to identify through data very early, so that we can work with the customer to get a good strategy in terms of ensuring that any outstandings that the customer may have with the bank will get correctly structured, and that can be made, the payments can be made. A lot of initiatives are being taken by the government, especially in terms of the SME sector. How do you ensure that you pass it on to the right set of customers with the least amount of intrusion? So digital again becomes the fastest and the most convenient way of reaching the customer. So again, you will have to innovate to make sure that there's a bit of risk, there's a bit of operations, there's a bit of customers' ability to use the right technology. So how do you assist? So it may not be digital, maybe it's phygital, assisted to the customer. So I think in everything that we do, some amount of innovation will come. They may not be big bang innovations, but there will be small changes being made, which will actually give a big impact. As you know, with banks being a highly regulated entities, and also the fact that the current pandemic has put a strain even on banks, in terms of continuously looking at our costs, in terms of looking at our margins. So every innovation which helps to get a product to a customer faster, cheaper, will be welcome. So I think the focus on innovation will continue. There's just no doubt about it.
Okay. Mr. Natarajan, while focusing on the innovation going ahead, will you also focus on the segment-oriented innovation? Maybe for millennial, there will be different offerings. For the SMEs, obviously there are different offerings, but in the customer segment itself, there will be like multiple offerings for a different set of customers.
That is not new at all. In fact, bulk of what you do is to customize your offering that delivers to the aspirations or the requirements of the customer. So customizing, hyper-personalizing it, being able to solve for it is an ongoing basis. Come COVID, come any other disruption. But to the point about what does the business model change, etc., I think an important part is, while the retail customer has always been open to innovation and has always been demanding frictionless of business and solutions and service, it has not been the same with the corporate space, right? The entire disruption in the corporate space today is as much us working from home as it is the corporate working from home. So a simple transaction that originally required two people to sign a document and then send that instruction is no longer practically possible in many cases. So in a way, the disruption or the innovation is almost being demanded by the corporate today, rather than being a push, it's now being a pull. Where corporates say, listen, get me something that allows me to do my trade transaction, that allows me to do my capital infusion transaction in a digital manner. So in part, a lot of the innovation that we've been seeing in the last 3 to 4 months in the institutional space is not just innovating, but acting swiftly and going by the learning of the first inquiry, building for scale for innovation in that space. So what we are seeing much more rapidly, but more quietly, the acceptability, the acceptance, and the usage of digital channels in the institutional space. So during the COVID, we actually enhanced the entire digital stack for our institutional space. So today, everything, whether it be a trade remittance, whether it be a doc trade, whether it be a open account trading, whether it be a FX, it's all done digitally. It's all executed in an architecture that allows two officers of the bank, of the company, to operate from remote location and still complete the transaction. So I think the innovation we see is widespread. That's a much larger acceptance of innovation. And therefore, that is the opportunity. Not segmentation, etc. continues. but it's grabbing this and then convert it to a durable solution. So a lot of consolidations tend to be occurring as a BCP mode. How do people retain that digitalization when life turns near normal is the bigger piece that we need to work through.
Okay, thank you for that note, Mr. Natarajan. And Mr. Narasimhan, coming back to you again, specifically on the technology front, we have seen a major shift of technology because everybody wants to go very aggressive in terms of digital innovation. What kind of future technologies, if you could name it, will be a major, what you can say, will play a key role specifically in the banking innovation going ahead?
Thank you very much for asking that question, because this is where, we can bring reality to the phygital, or the place where the physical and the digital meet. When I look at banking, there are some 2-3 things which come into picture. One is I may need to go to a branch for an interaction, and I need to know whom to meet in the branch. This is where banks have already rolled out apps which are there on my mobile. Can I bring in location services within the branch using the network as a sensor, so that as I walk into the branch, I'm greeted and I'm directed to go to the right place to complete my transaction? And then in some situations, there are places where I need to work through a workflow within the bank. I'm getting a loan, so I need to go and meet one person, get something done, and then I need to go somewhere else. There might be certain transactions which are complex, which can help me in minimizing my stay in a branch, because I want to make sure that it doesn't matter whether we are in pandemic or lockdown or containment zone or where we are. We always want to make sure that our time spent on a particular activity is least, and we are not waiting to get something done. And the moment you eliminate that wait time, the customer experience and the pleasure that the customer is going to have in order to bring in new business and then newer ways of working, everything changes. So this is where, we can use technology to the gain, bring in location services within the buildings. And this is going to give us 2 additional insights. One is there's enough analytics built within the bank, which tells me which website I visited, what I did as part of my online banking, and then how my transaction profiles are. So there's enough insights that are there, but there is not much insight into what happens when I visit a branch, because that's where you're dependent on the physical information to be available. And this can be digitized and brought in. We have done this similar thing to many of the retail organizations, wherein we know who spent how much of time in front of which brand, so that I can push promotions, I can give them discounts, I can give them special offers, so that I entice them to buy something, or buy the product which they feel they need. So can I bring in a similar innovation onto the banking front, so that my experience with the bank and with the branch is not going to be any different from what it should be. It should be very similar to what I do in front of an ATM. And if I've visited the ATM some 2-3 times, you get an alert as a banker, saying that there's some problem. Why don't you follow up proactively with this customer rather than me raising a complaint? So we shift the whole thing from being reactive to proactive. And this is something that we feel is very much possible given today's technologies.
Thank you, Mr. Narasimhan. Very, very interesting thoughts. And I think it was really interesting for me to, understand the perspective specifically on the innovation front, and, how you guys are, in fact, looking at, innovation, not only in the pandemic time, but going ahead, what kind of, new adoptions will be there. Thank you so much for taking part into the whirling world of innovation, and specifically the ETBFSI Converge. Thank you, Ms. Pai. Thank you, Mr. Natarajan. Thank you, Mr. Narasimhan. Thank you, Mr. SAXENA. And thank you, Mr. Sharma, for sharing remarkable insights. Thank you so much for taking part into ETBFSI Converge.
Thank you, panelists, for such a fascinating back and forth. You can connect with us on the subject matter expert by visiting the booth in the expo area. So do check out the offering by our partner, and they have presented information beautifully in the form of videos, reports, and surveys. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with another session on the other side.